I would like to thank you for being here because we're going to talk about a Microsoft 365 technology. And it will be a new and cool technology, but this is, of course, a developer conference. Dennis mentioned it this morning. This is a developers conference, developers for developers. So that's why we put in a lot of developers, so nobody can say that we didn't do anything for the developers here. But we're going to take a look at
Microsoft Loop.
Microsoft Loop.
And yeah, we have some disclaimers during this session, and that's mostly because we hoped a bit that it's general available, but more for the roadmap later on. But
yeah, even more, because we hope it's generally available. We hope there would be something out there. Because at Ignite 2021, last year, they announced Loop components in Teams, so we're definitely going to look at that, because that's what we're going to show you and can show you. And they had a very nice roadmap. So we were talking last January, what were we going to do at Future Tech? Because Future Tech, Dennis mentioned it as well, it's a future technology which should do something new, cool, bleeding edge. And they had a roadmap.
Yeah, and on the roadmap, we are all covered, because from the roadmap perspective, we have a few months to play with it in technical preview and maybe even a general available in 1st of April or May. But
yeah, and then Future Tech was postponed because this was originally planned for half March, somewhere around that. And then we thought, well, now this is our golden ticket. Now we have something we could really show you. And well, a lot of still is in private preview. So we can't show you everything yet, but we can show you a promise of what is to come. And there is still a lot to show you. So it's totally okay, we can show you everything. What we're going to show you is Microsoft Loop as we know it currently.
And of course, we will tell you how you can prepare as a developer, which things in your toolbox needs to be placed, so you are really ready for the future.
To keep everyone in the loop. Dun, dun, dun.
Smooth.
I think it's time we introduce ourselves because we're now already started strong with developers, and I have my roots in development as well. I'm Roelant. I'm 43 years old nerd, so almost as old as Steve back then. The past few years we gave a lot of trainings, Microsoft trainings, together with Michiel at Ordina. I'm a fresh Azure MVP since last March. So pretty strange I'm talking about something Microsoft 365, but of course it is leveraging all sorts of Azure. And since the 1st of June, I embarked on the voyage of being an entrepreneur. So I'm now setting up a cloud subsidiary at the Experts Group. Don't clap too hard, Dennis.
Yeah, and my name is Michiel Hamers. I'm working for 4 years at Ordina, and of course working together with Roelant for training a lot of colleagues on the Azure, all the things on Azure. And besides that, starting June the 1st, it's a good starting day. I started as a solution lead Microsoft Azure Cloud. So also a great place to work with. So if you need to check where you want to work, we have a booth over there with great candy, by the way. I'm 43 years already a nerd, so yeah.
Also almost as old as Steve, so.
Yeah, also not a multi-billionaire, no.
Yeah, and keeping things in sync is hard, because when you have read my bio on the Future Tech website, it says I've been happily now working for 3 years at Ordina. So that's kind of 4 years old. So it really shows how hard it is to keep everything in sync. So we already stated together, even when you're apart, Microsoft Loop is more of keeping stuff in sync, even when you are working apart. So it is to collaborate on so much things that we're going to show you in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So we're going to, and this agenda is more for us than for you. We do have the reputation for going overtime.
Yep.
So we have like 30 minutes planned. I see Sean laughing because he knows it's true. So we have 30 minutes contents planned, so you should probably reschedule your dinner plans because we're going to be here for a while. So this agenda is for us to keep us on time. So we're going to look at what is Loop, how does it fit into Microsoft 365 ecosystem, how can we leverage it in Teams and Dynamics, and Dynamics has been a kind of a curse word for a couple of years, or at least that sounded like it. You're actually
Dynamics.
getting out the holy water. Well, if you have asked me a couple of years ago, I thought Dynamics was kind of dead because, well, nobody was really adapting to it anymore, or at least it looked like that. But then Microsoft wouldn't be Microsoft if they surprised us with a portfolio change that, well, put everything, put everything around. How do you say it?
Shaking it up a bit.
Shake it up a bit, because we now have Dynamics on top of the pyramid, supported by the Power Platform as the glue between the Azure as an infrastructure, Power Platform to power it all, and Dynamics on top to build beautiful solutions for clients that power the Microsoft clouds. Microsoft clouds, I'm looking to the right to Jan, who has recently joined one of the Microsoft cloud teams. Yay!
Yay!
So Microsoft Cloud for industries, for healthcare, for education, and so on. There are a lot of more, and Jan will probably know. So if you want to know more about the Microsoft clouds powered by Dynamics, just go ask Jan, because
he knows everything.
Yeah. So we're going to touch upon Dynamics. We're not going to do Dynamics deep dive, but we're going to look at
a few items, and not too much, because it's just agenda slides, so we need to also...
Oh, we need to keep up pace, because this is 1 minute, and I'm not talking for 4. Okay, then we're going to look at adaptive cards, just because adaptive cards are cool, and at Microsoft Build last May, we got introduced that adaptive cards will be available as loop components in the very near future, as with everything we're going to present today.
Yep.
We're going to look at the underlying tech, because there are some caveats we need to take into account, and the roadmap, because we're presenting the promise of tech in the near future, so we're definitely going to look at the roadmap, what they have promised.
So we promise that we look at the roadmaps, but we don't promise that we can commit to that dates at the roadmap, because those roadmap dates are due dates by Microsoft.
Yeah, and
we are not from Microsoft.
Up till now, they have been iffy with keeping their dates for Microsoft Loop, but reasons, of course.
Yeah, cool. So, what is Loop? So, I'm just going to ask, is there someone who dare to say, besides this, can you say this part, I think that will Loop be? Someone? No? Well, yeah, maybe? Someone? Because it's a bit vague, I know. A new app that combines a powerful and flexible canvas. Cool. At the moment, and we have some caveats at the end in an overview, but at the moment it's more or less a convenient way to have synchronous lists, but you can work on that asynchronous. So you can create a table, for example, in a chat, and have some to-do task or whatever overview list, and you can work on that and post that as a component in your Teams chat. And you can work together and keep everyone in the loop, and everyone has the same, magically same table on his screen. Magically, like a unicorn.
We're going to demystify that magic.
Yeah, shall we? Okay. So, over this is not Teams. This is the great Microsoft Loop desktop application. As you can see, it's a loop in a GIF, because animated GIF is already available for Loop, but the real desktop application not. But over here you can see within the application there will be an overview of all your Microsoft Loop pages, Microsoft Loop workspaces, where you can work together within a team, within an Office 365 group, to share your same thoughts, ideas, and have real-time collaboration supplied by a tool. But yeah, you can use that in Microsoft Loop desktop application, and you can work even when you are apart. You can see everything in one place, and you can stay in sync. that's really important to stay in sync. It is also difficult to stay in sync. But I know for sure that if we are going to, when Microsoft Loop desktop application is launched, it's still not the application that you have open, because you have Visual Studio open. And as a developer, you have most often Visual Studio Code open. And the one other application that you have open is Microsoft Teams, at least, to follow up your meetings and that kind of things. And yeah, that's more or less, well, the main thing I think that we can leverage Loop, because it's not Teams. The desktop application that you can use.
Well, for the desktop application, we're not really sure about the use case yet, because we haven't got to use it in our day-to-day work. So everything it does, it looks like we could also do with other parts of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. But let us be surprised, because Loop is a lot bigger than only the app.
Yep.
And now we have an awkward handover because we did miss it. Well, that's okay, because we're going to use it in Teams, because that is what we do know. That is what they released last November as well. At Ignite, some weeks before Ignite, we got that nice little loop icon in Teams that we could leverage those loop components. And has anybody already used the loop components in Microsoft Teams? 4 people, so that's like, well, not a lot. So after today, you will probably, I think half of you will start using, if you use Teams, you will start using the loop components, because they are awesome. But they have a couple of caveats, and Michiel will touch upon those in much more depth than I'm going to. But for now, we can't use them in channels yet. So we can't use the loop components in channels. You have to do it on a one-on-one or one-on-multiple chat. So if you have a couple of people in the chat, you can introduce those, add those loop components, and we'll do a couple of demos in just a bit and use them. And there are a lot of good reasons for that at the moment, but Michiel will get into those. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned it a couple of times, a lot of it is in preview. So a lot of it is not working yet as it's supposed to in the future. So when you're going to really use it, well, just remind yourself that they're in preview, and maybe stuff will change or will not keep being supported or will work in a different way. As for now, we got 6 components in Microsoft Teams, the loop components. And 4 of them share a common theme, because there are lists. So there are a lot of components based on the same theme. We get a run-of-the-mill list. It's just a simple list of list items. We get a checklist. So we get the same simple list, but then with a check mark. We get a numbered list, which is still the same list, but then with a number. And we have the task list, which actually introduces some new functionality, and we'll look at the demo in just a bit. So we have lists as something we can collaborate on, because we can use them in Teams, and we have a single piece of truth, which is that single list that everyone can update simultaneously, as we're used to in applications like Word. So if you think, well, you also have a paragraph, but why shouldn't I use Microsoft Word? Well, it both has its use cases. So Microsoft Word is, of course, a lot more text. Mm-hmm. These paragraphs, for now, are smaller pieces of text.
Yep.
You shouldn't write books in the paragraphs or collaborate on those. It's just, for now, in the loop components as a small piece of text. And we have a table, because everyone needs tables. So if you, for instance, have a development team and you want birth dates of everyone because, well, you don't know them yet, then you can just create a table with everyone's name and just say, "Joe, everyone fill in your birth date." So everyone needs tables. But we're going to look at another couple of use cases why everyone really should use loop components. So at first, we're going to look at that simple checklist. And we're going to look at a situation for Contoso Electronics, which everyone, of course, knows. And Contoso Electronics is a bit of a strange company. We work there in the development team part-time. And it's a bank as well. It's really strange.
Yep.
And during COVID, of course, they all started working remote. So they do everything from Teams. And they struggle a bit. They have a lot of public-facing websites with a lot of e-commerce revenue. And they struggle a bit with the releases. And they have a release plan for next Friday. and they should have a to-do list in check, and they have a checklist. So we had a Teams chat. And if you're now going to say, well, they pre-recorded their demos, yeah, there's reasons, because these are demos with, well, we're not going to get into the reasons. If you want to know the reasons, just come to us afterwards.
Yep.
So we have Alex. Alex is our development manager, Alex Wilbur. So we're in a chat with Alex, with Deborah, which is our Q&A manager, and myself.
Deborah? Was it Karen?
Deborah, we call her Karen sometimes.
Okay.
Because Karen, why does it work? It doesn't work.
No.
No.
Why?
I don't know. But you're just going to talk faster now, because I can't control the timing. I'll just do it again. Just like it didn't happen.
You're
spoiling the demo now.
So, sorry. Can you fix it?
Okay, fix it.
Just fix it, go back for...
Yeah, how do you go back?
How do you go back?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So we have Alex, the development manager. No, it's okay, because it is slow. So we have, and then Deborah. So he's just asking, how can we manage this checklist? How can we do this? Not to screw up this time. Well, and Deborah just suggests we'll create an Excel list so everyone knows that doesn't work, because that will lead a life of their own. And we can't really use that, because then we get 6 checklists, which will never be in check. So I suggest we create a checklist in Loop.
Good suggestion.
Yes, so I go to my Teams message and go to the Loop icon, which is there for almost everyone. We'll get back to that as well. And I'll select the checklist. I give the checklist a name for release Friday the 13th, because that's where we usually release. I add a couple of tasks, keeping the branches in check, make sure the release is tagged properly. But I forgot something, of course. So Alex suggests, well, maybe we should have Michael in the loop as well. Alex is always a bit slow, but that is excellent. Oh, Laurie, you see Michael's already in there. We shouldn't forget Laurie this time. So Alex is now adding Laurie to the same checklist. So This is my Teams window. And Alex is now adding the item to the same window, so we have a single piece, a single checklist that is already, that we can update. Well, and Deborah or Karen then asks us, well, who has access? She's very concerned about that. So I show her that, well, everyone in the chat has access, and we can also change that as well. So usually people in the organization who have the link have access, but we can do only this chat, or who had access in the past. And now we have this single piece of information, this single checklist that we can just use for our release on Friday the 13th.
Yep. Good.
I'm still thinking about why the video doesn't stop.
Yeah, we did test it, and it was
working
with the left alt.
It worked on this very machine, just a couple of
seconds
ago, but not in presentation mode, so that's probably it.
Yep.
But of course, as every release on Friday the 13th, the release goes sour, and goes sour bad, despite of that beautiful checklist in Loop. So we need to do something about that. We have a
postmortem.
We have a postmortem incident message to write, because we had major outages on the public-facing website. We lost a lot of e-commerce revenue. So we need to write a postmortem message, because Alex, well, he worked all weekend. So again, he's in the chat Monday morning. Michael's continuously chasing everything. And we now suggest writing the postmortem incident message. And of course, this is a lot slower. Everyone survived the ordeal, but he had serious downtime. So then I go and say, so I guess we want an instant postmortem message. And of course, we can use Microsoft Loop for that as well. So we create a Loop component for a paragraph and give that paragraph a title and a nice postmortem incident message for a nice template. And I'll send that to Alex and Deborah to collaborate on. And Deborah, well, Karen has a valid point, because we forgot to include our white labeling solutions. So she's going to update from her side the postmortem message in real time to 19,000 affected users. And Alex, being the fact guru is, Well, you mentioned that we forgot to update the percentage. So it's going to update the percentage as well. All in real time, all a single piece of truth from just the simple Teams window. Of course, I say it looked good, and then I'm Captain Hindsight. Let's make sure this does not happen again.
Yep.
Now, we need to do bug fix. I promise you this was the last corny demo that we do for this one. We have another one planned, but it's not a simple component. We need to do bug fix, and we have to have an improved checklist. We have to do better than the first time, because if we forget stuff, that is totally unacceptable. So we had a post-mortem incident message as well, and Alex is now asking us, are we ready for a next release? And Deborah will tell us the result of that meeting is that not every phone was up to speed on who was responsible for which task. Anytime, Karen, Deborah.
I still think it's Karen.
It's probably, yeah. So we figured out the tasks were clear, but it's not responsible. For Alex, it was a real eye-opener, so, well, everybody learned, so then it's okay, right? Loop to the rescue once again. We can now add another list, one of our 4 lists, and now add the task list. Well, Alex is very, very happy, and he's a development manager. He should be happy. So I'm going to add a task list this time. When I hover down,
Yep.
magically, any day now. Karen, are you up to speed? Who is responsible for each task? Well, I think I have an idea, but let's collaborate on this because we're using loop so everyone can just join in. So I'm going to create another loop component, which is a task list, and input the same tasks because the tasks haven't changed. The date hasn't either, which is really weird because then it's months later now. So I put in the same tasks and the responsible person, which is strange. That's all, Deborah.
Yep.
So we now have a Microsoft Loop component in sync, which we can collaborate on.
Yep, it's synced. Yep. Awesome.
With the same functionality as in Teams. So if it's your name, then you're highlighted in red, just as to call out in the Teams chat. And Karen is happy about that as well. But we talked about it just now when using it in Dynamics, because in Dynamics, those components can have the potential to really shine.
Yep, and they can really integrate with Dynamics. So it's the content, everything can really come from Dynamics. And then that's also really the power of Loop is that it's really smooth, has a smooth integration with Dynamics. And that comes also together with the Power Platform as all the whole suite comes from the Dynamics parts. However, in the Dynamics world, is the most easy way to integrate loops into Dynamics, the other way around. So not really getting content from Dynamics, but using loops in Dynamics. That's the same way as you do that in Microsoft Teams, because really soon, at least according to the roadmap, there will be also the Microsoft chat, the Teams chat, available within Dynamics. So you can have content from Dynamics in Loop, but also you can use and leverage Loop via Teams chat in Dynamics, because that integration will be going next, a new step further. So that integration will evolve, and that you have standard integration of Loop with standard Loop components. The other way, what you can do is connect Loop, or essentially a lot of other development components. You can leverage that in other ways, like adaptive cards. You can use adaptive cards already. You can use that from an endpoint of Dynamics, or an endpoint of Loop, or what you just built yourself. And such adaptive card is, a a small card with some interaction with content from a loop, or content from Dynamics, or content from the rest of the Office 365 stack, and even also with own custom components. And yeah, you can build upon such adaptive card, and you can integrate that in the loop ecosystem. And the rendering part, then when it's rendered, it's really nice. When it comes to how you configure or develop that, then it's just a JSON file which has parameters, and you can have it more extensive like this, but hey, it's a simple one. As an example, you can just fill out some parameters, and then you have a nice adaptive card where you can get input from the end user and send that or submit it or execute it to an endpoint.
And of course, adaptive cards are bigger than just using it in a loop or just using it in Microsoft 365. Adaptive cards are implemented all over the place by multiple vendors, and there's an open source standard for these kinds of pieces, chunks of data, or interactions. But of course, we're developers, so we're actually going to build something with using adaptive cards. And for everyone who saw the Adaptivecards session this morning on planning poker, pubs up. Anyone visited that one? Oh, a lot of hands, very nice. Very nice session. So we're just also leveraging his backend. We're not going to create a backend, we're just going to create the adaptive card and use it in Teams.
Yep.
So if we go to adaptivecards.io/designer, where is my mouse? Let me try it like this. Okay, so we go to adaptivecards.io/designer. And I make this a little bit bigger. So we have a nice, rich editing experience. I'm not going to get this any bigger. So Adaptive Cards is kind of in the name. So we have multiple platforms we can leverage. So this is how it would look in Outlook. This is how it would look in Microsoft Teams. And we can, of course, we're now seeing the unlimited big desktop variant, but we can also do the mobile variant. So if we emulate a device and do a small mobile device, we see the adaptive card change. So adaptive cards are really adaptive, as the name suggests. Well, the adaptive cards, they are composed of a lot of different elements. So we have the documents here in as well, and you have to select a templating version on the right. So the target version is there, which can be relevant for some properties of some elements. So if we look at the card structure, which is there, you see a more nice hierarchical structure of the adaptive card, how it is presented, and the same is presented in the JSON, but the JSON gets big fast. So the card structure in this designing experience is really nice. We can add a couple of things to it. We see that on the left side. So for the card elements, and there are really basic elements. So we have some containers, some images, some text blocks, some media components, and some input with some buttons. Well, of course, we want to create a new card. So we're going to copy that card. We're going to make a new card with this amazing wizard, which is kind of broken, but the left one was the empty template. So we now can an empty adaptive card in which we can select a column set. And if we zoom in a bit, we see that it's actually an empty column set. Amazing, underlined and everything. Mm-hmm. So we need to add some columns, so we click on the button to add a couple of columns. And if you saw the template just earlier,
yep.
Yes.
It's
the contrast is a bit off, but let me do this. Where's your mouse? Can we add contrast?
Good question.
What we could do, there are some seats in the front which make it easier to see, because we can't really make it bigger, and we can't do anything about the contrast for the beamer. So, but we'll make sure to share the slides and the demos, so you can look at it more detail, and I'll try to keep you up to speed on what we're seeing here. So we added a couple of images, actually a couple of columns to represent the template we saw for the planning poker app we're trying to build. And we're going to add images. So we now just added an image. And if I now have a mouse, yes.
Yeah.
So we added an image, which is also reflected in the card structure, and now we input an URL. But we're not going to do that, of course, for every image, because then we'll be here even longer. So we have a structure prepared for you and just post in the JSON. So we're ready to go to post this beautiful planning poker adaptive card to Teams. And we added the values, the choice set here, because we need to cheat a bit, because the image submissions are not working at the moment in Microsoft Teams for the adaptive card, which is an active open bug that they're working on. So we're kind of cheating and adding the choice set below.
Yep. So even we learn a lot during prepping the demo.
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't work, but it's so beautiful if it does in the near future. So if we take that card payload and we have a beautiful copy card payload button on the top and go over to Power Platform, the dashboard, which has a lot of things we're not going to look at, but we're going to go to My Flows and going to set up an instant cloud flow. So we have the tutorial cloud flow in there, or there's another flow, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to add an instant cloud flow. So we get a beautiful wizard and have to put in a name and select a trigger, how that flow will be triggered. We're going to do manually for now because this is really easy for a demo. So we get the step in the top, and we're going to add an action afterwards. And that action will be the adaptive card posting in Teams. So if I could type, then I could find it, but this works as well. So we're going to post the adaptive card and wait for a response, which is the new version of that. So we can post it to Flowbot as a virtual agent, but we're going to do the safe way for now, and we're going to post in a channel. Our message is our template we just created in the Adaptivecards Designer, so we're going to post that in. And we have a nice little update message below. Yeah, it's a really big one. So that's a message the user will see when they submitted a response. Now we're adding it to a team, which is of course a development team, and we're posting it to the general channel just to bug a lot of people that are in the general channel.
Yep.
I will save it, and now it's ready for us to test, and we can post it to Teams. So if we head over to the top right, we have the test pane, and we can now just click test. We have to approve some permissions we have for posting into Teams. And we're now running the flow, which is instant, because we now head back over to Teams, which has the amazing user experience any minute now, so it's waiting there. So here we have the Microsoft Teams, the general channel, and in a minute you see the Planning Poker adaptive card pop up that we can reply to. Yes. I think this story is, of course, well, how many points should we give it? 5, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we send it, and we get that beautiful thank you for your response message that we saw earlier. But of course, now we're posting it just, well, nowhere, because that's where it ends. So we see it has finished now, but we really want to do something with the response from that adaptive card. Since we're logged into Teams, you can see which user clicked it, and we want that information as well. So if I go back to the flow, and here we see it has succeeded. Well, that we saw that in Teams already. So we click the Edit button and add another task, so we can actually do something with the response. We're going to send an email, because implementing Eduard's backend was a little bit too much for this demo, so we're just going to send an email with the score. And I'm going to send that email to myself in the tenant, in the Controls Electronics tenant, and I give it a nice poker planning result subject. And in the body, nothing too fancy, so we're just going to put in the user principal name and the planning value. And the planning value is something we specified in the template for the adaptive card in the designer. So if we save this and test it again, we get the same window. We get an extra permission to now also send an email, which we will test. We'll head back over to Teams, and For the very observant, it doesn't even mention which story it is, which is a bit weird for planning poker. But we now think it's 8 points. So if we look in Outlook, we have one email message. Now if you click it, we actually see it is my username because I replied to that planning poker submission, and I think that is 8 points. So we could use it for the Song Festival as well.
Yep. Yep, and that's a really good overview what you can already, at this moment already do with adaptive cards. Still, at some point, still some things that are not that smooth, but let's take us back to Loop and what's behind the curtain. And when you see this screen, you can maybe see what kind of issue you can have when you are using Loop at this very moment. Because if you now go to Teams and you create a Loop component and table or whatsoever, and you call it onboarding, it's also stated at your portal.office.com website. So you see over there, okay, you have 4 Loop files, and those are stored at OneDrive. And that's cool. OneDrive is cool. You can sync everything, and yeah. But for example, if I now work together with a colleague who is, how do you say that in correct English? Nah, it's recorded. Let's make it a Dutch word right in the English sin. When you have working together with a colleague, and that's a verrader, that it's pretty difficult to stay in connection. So because that person is moving out of the company, and you're working with OneDrive of that person. And if you work with someone and you knew the difficulties with OneDrive and companies, when someone leaves the company and you have shared files, those files are regulated, auto-deleted, auto-purged, or just how your company is using the policies of how to handle Active Directory user components, including all the related objects like OneDrive. So if you are going to use Loop at this moment, then you still have the issue of how to handle that and how to get control, get and maintain that control on those files, on those components, and also it are fluent files, and that makes it a bit tricky. We already mentioned that it's in Teams. You can use this in chat, not in Teams. But if you are going to search in search in the top bar for a loop component, and that loop component that we just mentioned was something like task list. Then it's listing the file of that component instead of the content, instead of right away the functionality of Loop. So in a search result, it shows as a file instead of really directly into the Loop components, at least for this moment, at least within Teams, because Teams is indexing and searching OneDrive. And that makes a bit difficult at this moment. Another thing that we need to discuss, you can edit loops after that you publish it and already started collaborating with it. However, if you are going to say, okay, Microsoft Loop has functionality across all systems in a Windows system, Mac, even iPhone, but on Android you cannot edit those components because it's always yet, and it's at roadmap, and at roadmap everything will be fine in the end, and I think everything will be fine in the end, sometimes we need to wait a bit. Another difficult one is when you are going to collaborate with people outside of your Office 365 organization and outside of your Office 365 tenant, then some Teams feature won't be available. And one of the things that is not working is that collaboration part of loops, partly because they are stored on OneDrive, but partly also from different reasons that Microsoft is going to sort out, solve, and make that working. But at this moment, it's not available. And OneDrive has a OneDrive synchronization client. And you can imagine if you have those type of strange binary files on your OneDrive, in your root from your OneDrive or in your Teams chat files, then it will also happen that you have issues, can have issues, with the synchronization of those files.
Well, I think I really have to speed up because we only have like 2 minutes. So I will surprise ourselves that we can talk about Loop for 45 minutes. We have the Fluid Framework. Fluid Framework is a framework powering everything in Microsoft Loop, and Fluid Framework is something you can use as a developer as well. So you can, as a developer, use the Fluid Framework to have the same real-time collaboration on pieces of data. And it won't live on the server, it's all managed client-side, so clients are responsible for their state, and they're using the Fluid Framework to update all those clients. Well, Microsoft wouldn't be Microsoft if they have an awesome Azure service, the Azure Fluid Relay, which is a managed service, managed Fluid Framework. So if you want to use the Fluid Framework yourself, definitely check out Azure Fluid Relay. As with everything we're talking about, it's still not generally available sometime again this year.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that brings us to the roadmap. November previous year, it's already has some loop components. So when you walk out of this session, you can use already some components, as already mentioned. The loop components in email, we are hoping that those parts will be released within 1-2 weeks, whatever. And for the rest of the part, they already moved to November. So it's really the future, so to say. We are working on it, and we can create it a bit ourselves.
Yeah, so what we do believe in Microsoft Loop, because some demos were, well, they're pretty corny, but there is a lot of power in using Loop as a collaboration tool between teams, between developers, because all for developers, right? So this is what we talked about. You talked about Microsoft 365, the Fluid Framework, Adaptivecards, how it all fits together. And then we're already 1 minute over time.
Yeah.
So, and that's we forgot to, because there was a QR code in the top right, so everyone could put in their questions. So we had so much time to answer your questions, but I think that will be during break.
During break.
So, thank you so much for attending our take on Microsoft Loop at Future Tech. I hope you had a great time. So if you have any questions, look us up.
Yeah, over here or at the booth. Okay. And also,
don't forget to mention the booth. That was it.
The booth.
Thank you so much.